guys, it's Raul again, and today I'm going to be doing my January wrap-up. So I'm coming to you from a slightly different angle because it's very cloudy outside, and the last time I filmed in my normal spot while it was like this, you couldn't even see the books. So I decided to switch it up a little bit today, just so it's a little bit brighter and it's a little bit easier to see. So let's just go ahead and get started. Now, the first book that I read in the month of January was The Girl Who Circumnavigated Fairyland in a Ship of Her Own Making by Catherine M. Valente. This is a middle grade story about a girl named September who is one day visited by a leopard, I believe, and someone called the Green Wind, and she gets taken off into Fairyland for adventures. There's really not much explanation to this book. Other than that, I mean, that's really where it starts off. But this is one of those books where you kind of don't really need much explanation to the world and to the things that are going on or why they're going on. Things just happen because they do. I really enjoyed this book. The writing style in here was very beautiful. Everything was very beautifully written and descriptive. And by page, I think 11 or so of this book, I was hooked on the story and the characters and everything. It was just a wonderful reading experience. You, throughout this book, encounter a lot of different quirky, fun, and different characters. They're all very unique and all very great to read about. I mean, September, our main character, is a great main character. She's brave, she is smart, and she just adds so much to this book. She's definitely one of my favorite main characters that I've read about. She, like I said, is just such a well-rounded character. For being an 8-year-old little girl, I feel like she's a better main character than a lot of other older main characters that I've read about. The story overall was just a very fun read, very whimsical, very magical. This first book follows her trying to find a spoon for these 3 witches, which sounds really weird, but it is very fun. And then the journey that she goes on to try and find the spoon for these 3 witches, that's kind of where it starts off, but obviously branches off from there. And there are a lot of different other things that happen throughout this book while she's on this journey. So it's very fun. I ended up giving this a 5 out of 5 stars. Really enjoyed it. And then hopefully next month in March, I know Marines is doing kind of a new project where she rereads a lot of her favorite books, and she will be rereading this series in March, and I will hopefully be joining her for the remainder of this series because I absolutely loved this series. I loved, like I said, the way it was written. Everything was just so beautiful. So we'll definitely be continuing on with this series next month, but loved this first book in the Fairyland series. The next book that I read in the month of January was Dustin Decay by Jonathan Mayberry. This is the second book in the Rotten Ruin series, and I've already read this with Di from Dices 19. Now, for those of you who have been watching my videos for a little while, know that a couple months back I read the first one. I believe it was in October, and absolutely loved it. This second installment in this series is no different than the first one. I mean, it improves on the characters. I'm really not going to go into some of the detail on the story, but this book starts off where the first book kind of ended. I believe it's a couple of months later. There is something that happened within the first book, motivates our characters to kind of move in search of this thing that they saw within the first book, and that's where it kind of starts off, is them kind of leaving in search for this certain object that they encountered within the first book. Now, obviously, things aren't going to be as easy. They can't just get to where they're from point A to point B so easily. Like, this is obviously a zombie apocalypse type book, which I have talked to you guys about before, and it's not easy. I mean, being in this kind of world and thinking that you're going to get from point A to point B without any real problems, that's not happening. So there are a lot of problems that our characters face within this book, and it was just awesome. Like I said, it improved a lot upon the characters and upon the story. This was just a superior book than the first one, and I gave the first book a 5 out of 5 stars. This obviously got another 5 out of 5 stars. I absolutely loved the writing. It was super fast-paced, very action-packed. I loved the kind of slow-burning romance within this. It is not insta-lovey at all, but it's not in your face either. It kind of takes a back burner to everything else that's going on, but this is very intense, very very stressful. It kept you on the edge of your seat for a lot of this book. For fans out there of The Walking Dead and YA, you guys should definitely pick up this series, because this is probably going to end up being one of my favorite series of all time. I absolutely loved this second book in the series, and I'm very excited to continue on with this series because I'm just absolutely loving it so far. And the next book that I read was another buddy read. I returned it to the library already, but that is The Woods by Harlan Coben. Now, I buddy read this book with Janie from Bookworms Buddy. Now, I really enjoyed this book. This is a kind of mystery, adult mystery novel about this man who, while he is a teenager, kind of somewhat not witnesses, but is part of a murder that affects his family. His sister is murdered at this summer camp, whose sister dies 20 years earlier at a summer camp. She's murdered, and her boyfriend and a couple of other of the campers are murdered also. 20 years later, one of the campers that was supposed to have been dead 20 years before ends up showing up dead 20 years later. So that brings up a lot of questions as to, well, if this person is dead now, what has he been doing for the last 20 years? Has he been alive? Are there more people that are alive that were supposed to have been dead? Everyone's very confused. They're receiving these weird messages and things that have to do with this kind of murder that took place 20 years earlier. It's really interesting. It's one of those books that keeps your focus the entire time that you're reading it because you want to know what's going to happen. Our main character is a prosecutor. I feel like he was a great main character to read about. There is kind of a court case that he's dealing with that really doesn't have to do with the main plot, which is one of my complaints about it. But this court case that he's going through kind of showcases him as a character and his abilities and kind of everything that he can do as a prosecutor, which I really loved that they showcased kind of his abilities that way. I wish they would have tied in this court case that he was working on with like the main mystery of these kids in the woods. But either way, I really enjoyed it. I ended up giving this a 5 out of 5 stars. I will definitely be reading more by Harlan Coben. Other than before this, I had only read one other book by him, so I would definitely be picking up more by him because I absolutely loved this mystery and kind of everything that was going on in this book. Characters, writing, just great. If you enjoy adult mystery, definitely check this book out. And the next book that I read in the month of January was The Wicked and the Divine, Volume 2, Fandemonium. Now, this starts immediately after the first volume. So for those of you who don't know, The Wicked and the Divine is a graphic novel series about these gods who come to Earth every 90 years, I believe, and only live for 2 years while they are on the Earth and kind of everything that's happening. So in this visit back to Earth, they are like celebrities, pop stars, and that kind of thing. And everybody loves them. They're all well known. And kind of the mess that happens around them. Now, the first installment in this series, I really enjoyed. I ended up giving it a 4 out of 5 stars. I know a lot of people complain about this being a little bit confusing and then not really understanding kind of what's going on. But I feel like once you really get into the story, it's easy to kind of keep track of everything and all of the different characters because there are a lot of characters, especially for a graphic novel series. This one is definitely a really great installment. I also ended up giving this a 4 out of 5 stars, but this ended on kind of somewhat of a cliffhanger. Like the ending, a lot of people talk about this ending for this volume, and I can see why, because this was a crazy ending, and it makes you want to pick up the next volume as soon as you're done with this, which I bought and will definitely be reading soon. But I really, like I said, enjoyed this. Ended up giving it a 4 out of 5 stars. It, like I said, it is a little bit confusing for some people, but once you get into the story, I was able to get into the story fairly quickly. I really enjoyed it. I loved all of the characters and kind of the story and the plot and everything that was going on. And the artwork, obviously, is just absolutely beautiful. So 4 out of 5 stars for The Wicked and the Divine, Volume 2. And after that, I decided to pick up something short and quick, so I picked up We Were Liars by E. Lockhart. Now, this book was a little problematic for me. I don't know what it was about. I just wasn't really able to connect with the characters and the story. I know a lot of people, back when it was, really popular on BookTube a couple of years ago, people were kind of just saying, go in blindly and not really giving a synopsis of this book. But I feel like it's just hard to give a synopsis of this book to begin with, so that's probably why people were just saying go in blindly. I mean, it's about these kids, or the Sinclair family, actually, who go off to this island every single summer and kind of the things that happen at the island. There's really no thread. I mean, there's a mystery kind of going on around it because they keep referring back to this accident that happened at the island. So you're kind of like trying to put together all of these pieces as to what really happened, and you put together all of these theories as to what this accident could be, what really happened on this island, because they keep referring back to this accident and the accident and the accident. So me going into this, I knew there was going to be some kind of big twist ending, because that's another reason why a lot of people were talking about this, because of the big twist ending. But I felt like it was really underwhelming. Like I said, it wasn't anything surprising. Because I knew there was a twist ending, I started to kind of compile all of these theories throughout this book while I was reading it, and then I kind of just ended up guessing it at the end. So it was a little underwhelming. It was really, really short, so it felt a little rushed. It was choppy. I wasn't really into the writing style. The Sinclair family is not a very approachable, very likable family. I mean, there were some instances in here where the train wreck of a family that they are was really sucking me into this, and I really kind of wanted to know more, but the instances where that happened, they were very short and far between, and I don't know, like, I didn't really like them as a family. They were weird, they were very uptight and very spoiled. I didn't really like them. There were arguments throughout this book that they were arguing about who gets what house and that kind of thing that just seemed very petty to me and not really important. Like I said, didn't really enjoy this one too much. I ended up giving it a 2 out of 5 stars just because, like I said, there were some instances in here that this family was such a big train wreck that it kind of hooked me and I wanted to know more about this kind of messed up family, but I didn't really get as much as I wanted to out of it, and the twist ending at the end just wasn't really cutting it for me. So yeah, 2 out of 5 stars. And the last book that I read in January was Truth Witch by Susan Dennard. Now this is an epic fantasy series, or the first book in an epic fantasy series that a lot of people out there are talking about right now. This is about these two friends named Safi and Isolde that are witches. Safi is a truth witch, and truth witches are very kind of rare. It's a rare breed. Her being a rare breed ends up being in danger because people want to kind of take advantage of her abilities and her powers. So I really enjoyed the kind of main plot line where Safi was kind of trying to get away from all of these different people that were chasing her down. Like, I really liked that cat and mouse kind of story throughout, where these people were trying to find her to take advantage of her powers and harness her powers in different ways. I really enjoyed that. I really enjoyed the friendship between Safi and Isolde. They are very, very kick-butt main characters that I absolutely loved. I mean, they were very enjoyable to read about. The action scenes in this book were just fantastic and really, really well written, which I really loved. But the main complaint on this book that a lot of people are talking about, and it's definitely my biggest complaint about this, is that the world building is just very clunky and very frustrating at sometimes. You are kind of thrown things at that really have no real explanation to them. I wish there would have been more explanation to, you know, all of the different witches and some of these things that they're referring to that seem like they should be very, very important. And as you kind of progress through the book, all of these revelations should be, I feel like, more of a shock factor, but because they're not really explained to begin with, you're like, oh, okay, well, I think that's important, but I'm not really sure. So, I mean, throughout this entire book, because of that lack of world building at the beginning, it kind of left me disconnected throughout the entire thing. It's probably, I don't know if it was a mixture of the lack of world building and then stress from work and that kind of thing, that I just wasn't able to really get into this book as much as I wanted to. I really, like I said, enjoyed the parts that I was really able to immerse myself in, but I only ended up giving this book a 3 out of 5 stars. I feel like it's really, really extremely hyped for that lack of world building. If I was able to kind of focus on this book a little bit more, I feel like I would have been able to get into the story a little bit more, but like I said, because of life and stress and that kind of thing, I just wasn't able to really get into this book the way that I wanted to, especially with that lack of world building. Because I was lost from the beginning, things weren't able to click with me because I was just like not in the right mindset. I will definitely reread this book before the next one comes out, and hopefully within a year kind of get my thoughts together again and kind of be able to be in a better mindset while reading this book, because it is a little bit confusing and it does take some time to kind of get used to everything and to figure out what's going on, what the author is referring to with some of these things, because like I said, it's not really explained very well. So I really did enjoy the main character friendship that everyone is talking about, and that's kind of what kept me going, is that main character friendship and that kind of cat and mouse chase where everybody was kind of trying to find Safi the Truth Witch was really, really cool. Definitely, like I said, recommended this book. Maybe it was just me that I was in the wrong mindset, like I mentioned, but I still feel like it was a little overhyped But yeah, either way, I did enjoy it. So yeah, guys, that is it for all of the books that I read in the month of January. Comment down below and let me know if you guys have read any of these and what your thoughts were and what your favorite books were for the month of January. Thank you guys all for watching, and I will see you guys all next time.